Okie dokie. This is page 5. Write a function g whose graph represents the indicated transformation of the graph of f of x. So f of x is 3x, absolute value of 3x plus 8 minus 7, and we want a reflection in the x-axis. Reflection in the x-axis is negative f of x, where we multiply the entire function by a negative. So negative absolute value of 3x plus 8 minus 7. Distribute it in front, so negative absolute value of 3x plus 8, and distribute the negative to the 7, so it becomes plus 7. 53 is absolute value of x minus 3 minus 2. A vertical stretch factor of 3 is 3 times f of x. So that's 3 times the whole function, absolute value of x minus 3 minus 2. 3 times the absolute value of x minus 3 minus 6. Distribute it in front, distribute it to the negative 2. Number 54 is asking us to find I of 3, I to the 34th power. We take 34 and we divide it by 4. 4 goes into 34 8 times. 8 times 4 is 32, remainder 2. So remainder 2 means it's the equivalent to I squared, which equals negative 1, which is B. And 55, the height of a triangle is 4 inches more than its base. So let's draw a triangle. If the base is B, then the height is the base plus 4, and the area equals 16. So 1/2 times the base times the height, B plus 4, has to equal 16. So I can times the whole thing by 2 to get rid of that fraction, and I'm going to distribute that at the same time. So b squared plus 4b equals 32. Subtract 32, and b squared plus 4b minus 32 equals 0. And then we can factor that. We have b plus 8 and b minus 4. Does that give me a negative 32? Yes, and a positive 4b. So b equals negative 8 and positive 4. Now, which one can actually the base be? The base could only be 4. So the base is 4 inches, and the height is the base plus 4, and that's 8 inches. And then the last problem on this page is divide 56. Divide the complex numbers. So we multiply by the complex conjugate of the denominator, 1 plus 5i. We distribute. We FOIL. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 5i is plus 15i. 4i times 1 is negative 4i. And 4i times negative 4i times 5 is negative 20i squared. In the denominator, I get 1 plus 5i minus 5i minus 25i squared. Remember, like we said earlier, I squared equals negative 1, so we have to replace that. So up here I get 3 plus 15i minus 4i is 11i minus 20 times negative 1. And on the bottom I get 1. My i's cancel, minus 25 times negative 1. So this becomes a positive 20, and 20 plus 3 is 23 plus 11i. And 25 times negative 1 becomes 1 plus 25, which would be 26. And if I want to write it in standard form, it's probably going to look like 23 over 26 plus 11i over 26. Okay, graph the function. H of x is 1/2 absolute value of x plus 4 minus 3. We love absolute value functions because your vertex is the opposite of what's inside negative 4, as long as there's no coefficient on the x, comma negative 3. And then my slope of the lines is going to be 1/2 and negative 1/2. So I'm going to go to -4, -3, and then I'm going to go down 1 and over 2, down 1 and over 2, and then I'm going to go down 1 and over to the other direction, and that's my absolute value graph. I missed my points there. You get the idea. And then last on this slide is describe the transformation from the parent graph of 1/2 square root of x minus 3. Well, we start with inside the radical. There's nothing inside. Our parent graph, well, apparently this is not the same parent graph. That's square root x. So our first is 1/2. That's a vertical shrink factor of 1/2. And then we have a vertical translation down 3. Okay, number 59 is the same instructions. Describe the transformation from the parent function. So remember the order that we describe these in. That's my dog in the background, bugging the crap out of me. First we start with our horizontal translations. So +9 means a horizontal translation. That's -9, opposite sign, so that's left 9. Then the reflections, and that's a reflection in the y-axis because it's inside the absolute value. Then our shrinks and stretches, that's a vertical because it's outside the absolute value. It's a stretch because it's greater than 1. Factor of 5. And then lastly our vertical translation up because it's positive 4. Number 60, find the value of x. The area of the triangle is 90, so 90 equals 1/2 times x plus 3 times 2x plus 9. I'm going to times this by 2, so I get 180 equals 2x squared plus 9x plus 6x plus 27. And that's 2x squared plus 15x plus 27 equals 180. Now I'll subtract 180, and 180 minus 27, borrow, got a 10, 153, 0 equals 2x squared plus 15x minus 153. Okay, so now we'd like to try to factor that, and it's not factorable. So we're going to go to quadratic formula, -15 plus or minus the square root of 15 squared minus 4 times 2 times 153 divided by 2 times 2. So -15 plus or minus the square root of 225. 153 times 8 is 24, 42, and 1224. So, and that's a negative, so plus 1224 over 4. So -15 plus or minus the square root of plus 225 is 9, 4, 4, 14, 49 divided by 4. And we need the square root of that. So we're going to find the calculator. The square root of 1,449. It's 38.1. We'll round. 15 plus or minus 38.1 over 4. I'm going to do the 38.1 minus 15. That's 0.1. 23.1 over 4. 23.1 divided by 4 gives me 5.8. So we'll say that the x is 5.8. And let's go back and look at the question. Find the value of x. So we did that. If it asked for the dimensions, I would need to plug that in and find what the height and the base were. But it just asked for the for x. So my answer is 5.8. Okay, the last three problems of the review sheet. Write a function whose graph represents the indicated transformation. So for 61, we have f of x equals the absolute value of 2x minus 9 plus 5. Horizontal translation, left 4. That's f of x plus 4. So that plugs in absolute value of 2 times x plus 4 minus 9 plus 5 on the outside, which becomes 2x plus 8 minus 9 plus 5, which is the absolute value of 2x minus 1 plus 5. If you have an old version of answers, you're going to want to update this one because it was wrong on the original answer sheet. Followed by a vertical stretch factor of 2. That's 2 times f of x. So that's 2 times the whole function that I got after doing the horizontal translation. So 2 absolute value of 2x minus 1 plus 10. This needs to be an absolute value bar. And then reflection in the x-axis, that's negative f of x. So that's negative 2 absolute value of 2x minus 1 minus 10, because the negative will distribute to the 10 as well, because we would multiply this whole thing by a negative 1, or just a negative. Number 62, the 5 square root of x minus 7, vertical translation up 3, that's f of x plus 3, which is 5 square root of x minus 7 plus 3, followed by horizontal stretch factor of 3. Horizontal stretch factor of 3 is f of 1/3 x. What goes into the equation is the reciprocal. So we get 5 square root of 1/3 x minus 7 plus 3. And the reflection in the y-axis is f of negative x. So that's 5 square root of 1/3 times negative x minus 7 plus 3. I'm plugging it in like that, and it ends up being final answer. Your g of x is 5 square root of negative 1/3 x minus 7 plus 3. And number 63, 3/5, negative 3/5 times quantity of x minus 8 squared plus 12, horizontal shrink factor of 1/3. So that's f of 3x. It's the horizontal shrink factor of 1/3. It goes in as the reciprocal. So negative 3/5 times 3x minus 8 squared plus 12. Followed by horizontal translation right 5. That's f of x minus 5. So that's negative 3/5 times 3 times x minus 5. Notice I'm plugging that in. Minus 8, bigger parentheses, squared, plus 12. This 3 is going to distribute. So negative 3/5 times 3x, negative 15 minus 8 gives me negative 23 squared plus 12. And a vertical translation down 6, that's f of x minus 6, which would subtract 6 here. So my final answer, making some room here, is g of x equals negative 3/5, 3x minus 23 squared plus 6. And that is it.